The Chiefs Instant Reaction post-game show is live with the 580 Sports Talk crew. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. That is Dan Lucero. That is Spencer Dupuis. And we are here with you live recapping the Kansas City Chiefs winning a game by multiple scores, winning a game by double digits, taking down the New Orleans Saints on Monday night, 26-13. Some gaudy statistical numbers for mostly some guys on the Kansas City Chiefs, a couple decent numbers for some Saints players as well. But Mahomes goes for over 300. Finally, Kareem Hunt is apparently back. He goes for over 100 yards and a touchdown on the ground. JuJu Smith-Schuster, my favorite stat from the night. He is the first Chiefs receiver, not named Rashee Rice, to go for 100 yards since JuJu Smith-Schuster back in the 2022 season. Travis Kelce had 9 catches for 70 yards in the game. Great to have this team show that, yes, indeed, they can beat a team by multiple scores. They can win a game at least fairly comfortably. Dan, I will start with you. You're still totally tuned up from that Royals post-game show. Great win for the boys in blue tonight. You can go check out that video on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel right now. So, Dan, I'll go with your thoughts first here, just overall on what was not the most aesthetically pleasing Chiefs win we've ever seen. But look, you double up an opponent in the NFL, you at least won fairly comfortably by National Football League standards.
Doubled them up in first downs, just about doubled them up in yards, just about doubled them up in time of possession. Like, this was dominant. And the only thing keeping it from being more dominant were more red zone misadventures. I mean, this could have been a 30-point blowout. The Chiefs were streets ahead of this Saints team tonight, and I think the stats are probably more of a reflection of that than the final score. Some frustrating ththings that continue to plague this team: red zone woes, turnovers, although at least this week Mahomes' interception du jour wasn't his fault. We could blame someone else for it for a change. I think that we have a very, very high standard for this team, and we judge them on a standard of darn near perfection. And they haven't gotten there. They haven't gotten particularly close. But both ways, they were really freaking good tonight. I thought that was the best they've been. Even given some of the things I'm sure we'll get to, they were really freaking good tonight. And that final score flatters the Saints.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, to be completely honest with you. I mean, they had their moments early on. There were, funny enough, a couple of the best throws that Derek Carr made over the course of the entire game were incomplete. That one that he got hurt on at the end of the game, I mean, that was, and Dan, I'm sure you can speak to this, that was like a prime Russell Wilson moon ball to Tyler Lockett 60 yards down the field. Yeah. I mean, that thing nearly scraped the sky, falls out of this, and just barely missed out, and that's not always on the quarterback when you get a throw like that close. But I thought the Chiefs defense played really well, even with only getting kind of an game, all things considered, from Chris Jones. I thought the coverage was pretty good throughout the game. They really made things difficult on a Saints team that, and you guys might have touched on this on 580 Sports Talk Monday while I wasn't on the show, but this is a Saints team that early in the year, in those first 2 games, when they were able to score and get into their stuff and play from a position of strength and with a lead, great. Everything is phenomenal. They're cooking. They look awesome. And then when they have to play from behind, not so much. And they run into these problems. And you run into the Derek Carr problem, the problem he has had his entire career. When you are leading as the opposing team, you know that team with Derek Carr is going to have to pass. They're going to have to drop back and throw downfield a bunch. And what can you do when you know that is coming? Get after the quarterback, put pressure in his face. And the Chiefs were able to do that tonight. So I thought it was a really good effort by them. And again, we'll get to more details on the offense here in a moment. Spencer, I'll go to you for your overall thoughts on what was a pretty dang impressive 100% effort from the Chiefs on Monday night.
Yeah, it really was. And I think the emphasis was to get the ball out quick and get it to your tight ends tonight offensively. This is a weird stat to think about. Travis Kelce threw for 331 yards, but didn't have a touchdown in this game. Passing. That's just kind of crazy to think about, but he was
Patrick Mahomes, but to specify, Patrick Mahomes,
yeah. And he was 28 for 39. I think he looked like a lot better player he looked like more like the Patrick Mahomes that we know and love than what he has in the past few weeks. And as one of the comments said up there, baby steps from Gabe. This offense took it on the chin when they were doing some dumb stuff in the red zone. But the offense started clicking tonight, and I think that's good for a team that is 5-0, a sneaky 5-0, trying to go for back-to-back-to-back Super Bowl titles. And Dan and I talked about it on the show tonight. Like earlier today, there's got to be like one game where they just fall down, but tonight wasn't the night.
You mentioned, Spencer, the fact that Mahomes goes for 331 yards. I mean, 8.5 yards an attempt, completes 28 of 39. That's more than 2/3 completions. Only gets sacked 2 times for a grand total of 10 yards. Doesn't throw a touchdown pass in the game, and the 1 interception, but that certainly wasn't his fault. I mean, It hit JuJu right in the chest in both hands. Not his fault at all. And I'm looking at the advanced numbers right here. The EPA per play, all that. Not the greatest game we've ever seen from him, but 8.4 total EPA for the game. 0.18 EPA per play. That's a really good number. If you don't know a whole lot about that stat, that's a really good number to be at 0.18 over the course of the game. So it was a really solid effort overall from Mahomes, even if we have seen better from him in the past. But Dan, I was more impressed by some of these guys who had turned back the clock night at Arrowhead. I mean, Travis Kelce doesn't have an otherworldly game, but hey, 9 catches for 70 yards when you are a mid-30s, approaching late 30s tight end. Great. Awesome. That is fantastic. I'm not going to complain about that one bit. JuJu, we gave you that funny stat earlier, but that was crazy. That's the most yardage he's had in a game since the 2020 wild card round of the playoffs when he was playing with the Pittsburgh Steelers over 1,300 days ago. That's a stat from Ben Solak of ESPN. I will admit, I said as recently as the end of last week on 580 Sports Talk, I was not a believer in Kareem Hunt. I thought even his production from a week ago was a mirage. I did not believe that he had any juice left. I don't know how much is left to squeeze out of that orange, how much juice is left in there, but whatever he had left, he showed tonight. Goes for over 100 yards with a touchdown on 27 carries. I was really impressed by some of these older, more beaten up dudes on this Chiefs roster and the way they were able to perform against a defense in New Orleans, Dan, that is really old. Just generally speaking, front to back, they're really old, but they are well coached and they are really talented.
Yeah, and had been playing really well the first 4 weeks. Not a walkover by any stretch of the imagination. You said it great. If it had turned back the clock now, like Travis Kelce getting involved early and looking like his old self more and more as the weeks go by. JuJu, yeah, absolutely. I mean, him and Kareem Hunt, like, think about this offense in 2018, man. Holy cow. They might have set even more records than they already did with the Chiefs back in 2018. But no, they look re-energized. And like, again, this is October and there's a long way to go in the season. But sometimes, like for Kareem Hunt, he wasn't healthy last year. He had the sports hernia, and I wonder how much that took out of him because he looks like a completely different player. And JuJu Smith-Schuster, we know he's on a tough wheel. He's got one bad knee that's always going to kind of be bulky for him, but knows how to get open, knows how to work the middle of the field, and has a rapport with Patrick Mahomes that I thought you could really tell, in contrast to he and Xavier Worthy aren't quite all the way on the same page yet on some stuff, but Mahomes and JuJu, like they've got some JuJu, for a lack of a better way to put it. So yeah, it's kind of fun to see those guys, the over the hill gang, if you will, out there making big plays and going over the century mark for both Smith-Schuster and Hill, and being crucial parts right now of this Chiefs offense.
Yeah, pretty incredible, all things considered. JuJu Smith-Schuster on 6 of his 8 plays had a positive success rate. And for those who know, that's moving the ball half of what you need on first down, 70% of what you need on second down, converting for first downs or touchdowns on third and fourth down. He was really effective today. They were getting him the ball, chunks of yardage. He obviously had the one massive reception, but still 130 on 7 catches is a really impressive night. And Spencer, to the point that Dan just made about that rapport between quarterback and receiver, that's why you went out and got JuJu, right? And again, another player that I was skeptical about because I thought his knee was toast last year.
Yeah.
And look, if you had not watched any games this season and you missed all the offseason news and you said, oh my God, JuJu is back with the Chiefs with that knee, with that production from a year ago, the ESPN analytics that he was the worst receiver in football a year ago. What are they doing? And I was largely in that camp, but I think it is clear that the fact that those two have a bond and have some trust, that makes things, pull my headset out over here, that makes things, I think, a lot more comfortable for Mahomes, while other pieces like Worthy, like the offensive line, are being worked out for the rest of the offense.
Yeah, and I think it's it's the next man up mentality, right? Obviously, they lose Hollywood Brown before the season. They do sign JuJu Smith-Schuster. Then they lose Rashee Rice last week for probably the rest of the season as a prognosis, essentially. And you need a guy to step up. They have yet to make an acquisition at receiver. They still have time before the trade deadline to decide if they're going to do that. But you need a guy to step up, and that was JuJu tonight, and he proved that he can still do it in this league, right? You just mentioned you didn't think he could still do it in this league, and he was turning on the jets on that catch down the middle when he was running side to side, and I didn't think I was watching the NFL in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to put it. A couple other quick notes from the offense, because I do want to get back to the defense really quickly. This from Gabe on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube comments. When will the front office wake up and trade Sky Moore to McDonald's, as he belongs nowhere near a field? Yeah, I texted you guys during the game. Our group chat was going off talking about the Royals. Our former intern, Trenton Craxner, as well, talking Royals. And I said, hold on, I need to jump in here. Beg your pardon, but Sky Moore to the gulag immediately. Like this it's bad. This is just an entire show of me admitting takes I was wrong about. And Dan, you remember from that year's draft, I thought Sky Moore was going to be a great pick for this Chiefs team. I really liked that pick at the time. Slot receiver, decent speed, good hands, crisp route runner. What could you not like? Well, it turns out he has none of those things in the NFL, and that was a Maction mirage for Sky Moore. So, but again, to kind of reiterate that point we were making, if you've got a guy like JuJu Smith-Schuster, who even if he is not the player he was 2, let alone 3, 4, 5 years ago, there's still a connection there. There's still an amount of, look, maybe he can only run 7 yards and go down, but that's better than throwing a 7-yard out and Sky Moore dropping it or just going for a nice light jog on his 10 snaps a game. So I think that's a positive step for this offense to get those guys back in a rhythm. I did want to make sure, though, Dan, we got one more point here about this Chiefs defense and their effort today. Like I said, it was not the greatest game for Chris Jones. I thought he was going to have a monster game against an offensive line that has been very wishy-washy and banged up for New Orleans. And I believe Troy Aikman even said so on the main ESPN broadcast as well. He was pretty quiet until he got some pressure on Jake Haener late in the game. But other than that, I thought this was a very well-rounded effort by the Chiefs.
Yeah, not a lot to complain about. They aren't maybe making the splashy plays. They're not having a ton of sacks or a ton of turnovers. So Brian Cook did have an interception on I'm not sure what that was from Derek Carr. That might have been the first sign that tonight wasn't go the way the Saints wanted to go. Derek Carr is out there throwing ducks off his back foot to nobody. But yeah, it hasn't maybe been like the splashy, explosive stuff, but they're just making it really hard for teams to drive down the field. They're putting them in tough situations. They're getting third down stops, and they're finding ways to keep the other team from scoring, which is the name of the game, right? Like maybe they don't have a guy right now who's on pace for 20 sacks, or they're not leading the league in turnovers forced or anything. In fact, I guess after tonight, they're still -2 on the year in turnover margin because it was even. The Chiefs had the interception, the Cook interception, then the Saunders interception for the Saints. So 1-1. But it's not noisy. It's not flashy. It's just really fundamentally sound. Everybody knows their assignment, and they come up big when it's time to stand up and be counted. And that's hard to come up with a whole lot of hot takes about, but it's just solid. It's well-rounded. It's excellent.
All right.
We went the first opening drive for the Chiefs defense because of that interception didn't allow points this season.
That's right.
That's true. Like we mentioned earlier, baby steps. They're getting there. The well-oiled machine is getting the WD-40 right now. They're getting back to that point. Let's real quick just get some final thoughts on this one. I will actually go first. Colin Saunders. Incredible. I'm just going to be honest with you, man. The fact that they were just telling that story about his brother dancing with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. He's the former Chief, beloved by his teammates in Kansas City. And everybody loves when big guys pick off passes or block kicks or return fumbles or whatever. So pretty cool to see for Colin Saunders and his return to Arrowhead. And thankfully, it came in a loss for the Saints. Spencer, we'll go to you. Final thoughts on this Chiefs win on Monday night.
You get everyone involved. I mean, it was tight end affair for the beginning. It was, you threw to Jody Fortson, the guy that just came back to the team, who another reunion and one of your all-time favorite Chiefs, Brendan. You threw to him before you threw to a receiver. But then You threw to JuJu, and JuJu went off tonight, had 130 yards. Like, you needed somebody to pick up the slack, and somebody did it. And what sticks out to me about this game is the stat that I brought up earlier about 331 yards and a fluky interception, but no touchdowns. That's just a crazy stat you don't see in the NFL.
Dan, it's been a busy night for you. Your final Chiefs thoughts.
This night is probably one of the greatest in Kansas City sports history when you get down to it. The Royals with a win earlier tonight, and they even up their series against the Yankees with a win in the Bronx, and the Chiefs winning on Monday Night Football tonight. Pretty great night to be covering sports in this area, and a great night if you are a Kansas City sports fan, and a performance from the Chiefs that, look, like, we can nitpick about stuff like the tackle play still needs to improve. Wanya Morris and Jawan Taylor didn't have great games tonight, and the Chiefs have to firm that up. They got to be better in the red zone, maybe a little less silly, a little less squirrely in the red zone. They had a touchdown wiped off on a penalty. You can nitpick a lot of stuff, but you go look at that box score tonight, and it was very, very clear that not only were the Chiefs better than the Saints, they were a hell of a lot better than the Saints, and it was a dominant performance, even if the scoreboard didn't reflect it at the end of the night, and that's what we've been waiting to see. We've been waiting to see the Chiefs dominate a team. Now, scoreboard-wise, it would be nice to see them dominate in such a way that the fourth quarter is not so edgy at any point. But stat sheet-wise, that was a dominant performance we've been waiting for from the two-time defending champs.
And that is a perfect note to wrap up tonight's Kansas City Chiefs Instant Reaction Show with. We will have plenty more Chiefs talk to get to coming up Tuesday on 580 Sports Talk. Plenty of Royals to get to as well, as they evened their ALDS series in best of 5 against the Yankees at 1 game apiece. We'll break down the Royals win. We'll break down the Chiefs win. We'll talk all things Kansas Jayhawks. Oh dear. With Michael Swain of Fog.net. There's basketball to talk about. Big basketball recruiting scoop from Mike today. We're going to talk about that some on Tuesday, plus a whole lot more coming up 3 to 6 on Tuesday afternoon. Until then, for Spencer Dupuis, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Thank you for checking out this week's edition of the Chiefs Instant Reaction postgame show following a 26-13 win over the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk to you coming up Tuesday afternoon.